want to maintain throughout this process. I thank you for your cooperation. Lead Counsel.
Good morning, Madam Chairperson, Commissioners and members of the audience. May I ask that the witness be ushered into the hearing hall. Thank you.
I, Edward Singhate,
do swear
that
I will speak the truth,
I will speak the truth,
the whole truth,
the whole truth,
and nothing but the truth.
and nothing but the truth. So help me God.
You may be seated, Mr. Singhate. Welcome to the TRRC, Mr. Singhate, and thank you for honoring our request to appear before the Commission to assist the Commission in its truth-seeking mandate. Your role here today would be a dual role. You realize, and of course you are aware, that you have been subpoenaed to appear by reason of the fact that you have been adversely mentioned as someone who participated in committing violations of rights during the Jammeh era. We would also crave your indulgence to assist the Commission in discussing certain facts that would enable the Commission to arrive at the truth as to what happened with regards to those particular incidents, even though you have not been adversely mentioned regarding those incidents. That is just to enable the Commission to establish an impartial historical record of what actually happened. Are you prepared to do that, Mr. Singhate?
Absolutely.
Great. Before we start, I have certain warnings that I need to give you. You are a lawyer by profession, so you know the drill. It is an offense under the laws of this country to lie under oath. You are aware of that. Answer by indicating yes or no.
Yes, sir, I am.
Thank you very much. Also, under the laws or the act that establishes the TRRC, it is an offense to provide false information or false testimony to the TRRC. Are you aware of that?
Yes, sir.
Thank you very much. Let me just give you an outline of the issues I would wish us to discuss in your testimony. You don't necessarily have to write these things down. I would guide you in your testimony and would lead you into the topics as we progress. The first thing I would wish us to discuss is your biographical information. We need to know who is this Mr. Edward Singhate that is before us. You have an interesting background. We would wish to know who you are, all the positions you have held so far and so forth. I know it's a very, very long biographical information, so we would endeavor to summarize and just go through things quickly. Then to the main substance, we want to talk about the planning for the July 22nd coup d'etat. What were the conditions that made the military feel that they needed to carry out a coup d'etat, even though they were all aware that this was an illegal venture? Then we would want to discuss how the coup d'etat was actually carried out. We have heard interesting theories as to what or may not have happened. But principally, we want to know what were the institutional failures that made the coup d'etat possible. Also, individuals have appeared here and roles or have been attributed to particular individuals. We want to know what is the truth about that. Then we want to talk about the arrest, excuse me, the arrests and detention, be it lawful or unlawful, of security officers soon after the launch of the coup, the arrest and detention of politicians, including their torture at Mile 2 prison. We would also want to talk about the torture of security detainees. That's what's called the night of torture of 6 September. We would also want to talk about November 11, whether it was a coup or a coup in the planning. We want to talk about the execution of soldiers on the eve of Remembrance Day. We would want to talk about the arrest or unlawful arrest, as it were, of Sana Sabali and Sadibu Haidara, and the fabrication of evidence leading to their incarceration, or Sana Sabali's incarceration for 9 years. We would want to talk about the execution or the assassination of Honorable Usman Korosise, the then Minister of Finance. We would want to talk about the arrest and detention and, of course, torture of civilians who were alleged to have been demonstrating near the American embassy. And we would also want to talk about the attack on the UDP supporters at Denton Bridge. It's a long list of issues.
Yes, sir, I understand.
So it is unlikely that we would finish today. So we would push and try to finish tomorrow. So November 11 obviously would take a bit of time. We would want to go through that extensively. So that is the outline of what we would wish to talk about. Are you ready to begin?
Yes, sir, I am.
Kindly give us your full names, please.
My name is Edward David Singhateh.
Date of birth?
8th of August, 1968.
Where were you born?
United Kingdom.
Mr. Singhateh, allow for 3 seconds.
Okay.
Between our speeches. That way our speeches would not overlap. That would also assist the interpreters. And be able to interpret that in the local language. You were born in the United Kingdom. Where in the United Kingdom?
Melton Mowbray, Leicestershire.
And in which part of the United Kingdom? England, Ireland, Wales?
England.
Thank you. And where did you go to school?
I started school in St. Francis Primary School, United Kingdom, and then my father relocated back to the Gambia with the whole family, and I started at Bakau Primary School in the 70s. From there, I proceeded to St. Augustine's High School, and after my O-levels, I went to the Gambia High School for my advanced levels.
Perfect. I have looked at your statement, and a Mr. Seni Sise was your headmaster at Bakau Primary School. Is that right?
That is correct.
Wonderful. Good. So, what did you do after you finished A-levels?
After my A-levels, I briefly worked for the Gambia Civil Aviation Authority I started, I think, end of 1989, beginning 1990. And should I proceed on my profile, or do you want to
Yes, yes.
intermittently ask?
Let's
Okay.
first establish the profile, and then we delve into the other things.
Okay. No, I mean, should I proceed with my own profile?
Yes,
From
please.
here?
Yes.
Okay. So from 1990 to 1991, I worked as an electronic technician at the Gambia Civil Aviation Authority. 1991, January, I joined the Gambia National Army. In May of 1991, I was promoted to an officer cadet. I served as an officer cadet until January of 1992, when I was commissioned as a second lieutenant. I was then sent on course to the United States, and on my return sometime in October of 1992, I was made platoon commander in Alpha Company 1 Battalion. I remained as a platoon commander of the Alpha Company, intermittently sent to oversee the intelligence unit for a very brief time, but generally I was in that position until July 22nd, 1994.
Platoon commander in the Alpha Company.
Yes.
Who was the company commander?
My company commander initially was Captain Savichiba. He was a captain at the time. I think he retired as a major or lieutenant colonel. Subsequently, my company commander, there was a short while that we did not have a company commander, so I was overseeing the company. But then my last company commander prior to the takeover in 1994 was Major Baji.
At what stage, if any, did you work with then Captain Mamad Cham?
Captain Mamad Cham, I was posted to Echo Company as an officer cadet. I was at the training school, and to get a little bit of experience in leadership prior to going to the United States on training, we were sent to Echo Company. We were attached to Echo Company, and the company commander was Mamad Cham at the time.
Perfect. Could you proceed with your description of your profile, your biography?
Yes, sir. From July 22nd, 1994 to sometime in February, March 1995, I served as Minister of Defense. After the arrest and detention of Captain Sana Sabali, who was then the Vice Chairman of the Armed Forces Provisional Ruling Council, I became Vice Chairman of the Armed Forces Provisional Ruling Council and Minister of Defense. I stayed in that role until September of 1996, and after the presidential elections, the president-elect at the time made me Vice President Designate. I was Vice President Designate until March of 1997, and in the new cabinet I was made Minister for Presidential Affairs, Fisheries, Natural Resources, Forestry, the Environment, and National Assembly Affairs. I believe I stayed in that role until March of 2000, sorry, August of 2000. And then I was reassigned to the Ministry of Works, Communications, and Information. But I still retained the Presidential Affairs portfolio along with National Assembly Affairs. Yes, sir.
It's correct that you continued to hold ministerial positions until September 2007.
Yes, I held various portfolios such as works and infrastructure, trade, industry and employment, forestry and environment until 2007. Yes, sir, that is correct.
And then what did you do after 2007?
Well, I started studying law at the University of the Gambia September 2006. I finished in 2010. In March of 2011, I joined the judiciary, and I was magistrate class 1 at the Brikama Magistrates Court. In September of 2012, I was posted to Bundung and made acting principal magistrate. I stayed in that role until, I believe, March of 2013, when I left the judiciary and joined private practice. I worked as a legal practitioner, private legal practitioner at Dandimaya Chambers until February of 2016. I was appointed Vice President of the ECOWAS Commission. In March of 2016, I stayed in that role until March of 2018. From March 2018 to date, I have been working as a consultant.
Thank you. So for 12 out of these 22 years of Jame, you worked with him?
Yes, sir. I guess, if you calculate it, yes.
Yes, I have calculated it. I dare say even 13, because 1994, half of 1994 included. So I would take it that you know Jame pretty well, in view of this long period of association with him.
Is that a question? Or?
Yes, it is a question.
Well, I know him from a lot of the testimony that I have heard during the course of this commission has led to me believing that perhaps I didn't know him as well as I thought I had, but that is subjective.
We will get into all that, Mr. Singhateh. You joined the Gambia National Army in the early 90s. In 1991, you were an officer cadet. Could you tell us, because you have straddled pretty much both ends, a recruit, a very junior officer, and trainee officer, that is cadet, and then a commissioned officer. At that time, what were the problems in the army?
Well, at the beginning, there were not many problems. I dare say the military is a tough place. I believe it was President George W. Bush who said that if you cannot stand the heat, get out of the kitchen. But, I mean, having said that...
Must the kitchen be necessarily hot?
Figure of speech, sir.
Proceed, please.
Thank you. At the beginning, everything was okay. There were no problems. The military was sizable. It was growing. However, it was like a small unit. It was not established as a full army because everything was located either at Yundum or Farafenni. But this is not one of the problems that we faced. I'm just trying to give a general description. But having said that, morale was okay. It was generally high. There was an incident or two regarding the soldiers who had returned from Liberia, who had started a mutiny, and it had got out of hand in Yundum. I think soldiers from Charlie Company and then subsequently Delta Company. There were shots fired, but there were no casualties. Discontented enough to conduct a mutiny. deep-seated problems that soldiers that had served for several years were facing. But talking, of course, to some of them, they were complaining about arbitrary dismissals. You know, summary justice in the army can be very brutal. You can be charged for a minor offense, a minor infringement, maybe insubordination. You will be marched to the adjutant, and he can dismiss you. It's his prerogative. So yes, definitely there must have been major discontent for them to go to the extent of conducting a mutiny.
But you are not aware of the sources of the discontent?
Like I said, at the time I was very new in the army. I was still an officer cadet, so I really didn't know.
How about the conditions of service up to the point officers like yourself decided to overthrow the constitutional order? What were the conditions in the army?
Okay. I proceeded for training in January of 1992, and I returned, like I have just informed you, sometime in October of the same year. Now, when I arrived, the British Army training team were just about to hand over to the Nigerian Army Technical Assistance Group, NATAG. There was a lot of confusion. We didn't know the reasons why that was happening. They weren't advanced to us. It was a political decision, but which was accepted, and we just followed orders. Subsequent to that, there was a discontent. Morale started to dwindle. There were no recruitments, and subsequent batches that had finished their term were leaving, and so the workload increased, and they were not, the Nigerians were not recruiting. I'm not sure whether it was a finance issue or whether it was a policy issue, but that was a problem. The same summary dismissals became even worse because, of course, you see, the Nigerian army is a very big army, very regimented. Gambian culture had seeped into our ranks, and so.
What do you mean by that? Gambian culture has seeped into our ranks. Could you be more specific?
Okay, I can, but now you are interceding and then cutting my flow. But let me explain that.
Please do expect that, because it is my responsibility to lead
as long as you
evidence.
take note and then allow me to come back to my trend of explanation. Otherwise, those who are following it would not fully understand where I was trying to get to.
But I determine
okay.
what is relevant for the purposes of the hearing, and therefore, if need be, I would just cut you off.
Absolutely.
Politely, and make sure that we put it things on the right track, at least, because there is so much to say. Otherwise, we would spend a lot of time talking about things that may not necessarily be helpful, at least in our view. So kindly proceed, please. We want to know what were those Gambian cultures that seeped into the ranks.
Tribalism, for instance. The officer corps was fragmented. You had the Mandinkas, and then you had the few Wolofs. And I would have touched on this a little bit later anyway, because this is how or what would explain to you a little bit about Yaya Jammeh and his position in the officer corps. Because being a Jola and an outsider, he was not fully accepted. But coming back to the exact question, yes, of course, regional affiliation, but not only that. I will give you an example. You see, Sana Sabali was once punished by one of the Nigerian officers for eating on the same plate with a junior soldier, with a soldier. I think a private soldier or a lance corporal. Now, in our culture, you have some food, you're eating, you see somebody, you call them to eat. It's normal. But obviously, in a proper regimented army, there is a limit to how far you can mix. And that's why I said the Gambian culture had sort of seeped into the military, and this is one example of the clash of cultures, or clash with culture versus regimentation that we had. Even though I must say that the punishment, I mean, definitely was right, because in normal armies you cannot fraternize with junior ranks.
That is true. So besides, well, continue with your description of the problems
Okay.
that you experienced at that time.
Okay, sir, yes. Well, apart from the downsizing of the army, or the shrinking of the military because of non-recruitment and soldiers leaving, the conditions were also deteriorating as well. The British at least looked a little bit more, I should not say a little bit, they made sure that whatever was due as far as welfare was concerned was given. Now, under the NATAG, especially for guards that were on duty and the duty officers, the feeding really deteriorated to an extent that we were being given rotten food. Yes, sir, you wanted?
Was that a matter of routine, or was it just some occasional aberration, a situation that just happened out of control of those responsible?
It was not a matter of this thing happening occasionally. It became routine, and it featured in our reports as duty officers, and our reports were rejected, and we were told to go back and then write it properly, otherwise we would face the punishment.
How frequent was this? You said it was a matter of routine. I would imagine it would happen 2-3 times a week.
Something of this, well, put it this way. Over the weekends, when most officers, the senior officers, are not in the camp, we would eat rotten food. Put it that way.
The reason why I asked this question is that we have received testimony from a number of soldiers who served at the same time with you and who actually participated in the coup with you. Of course, they did indicate that the food wasn't the best quality, but this is the first time we have heard evidence of rotten food being served to soldiers as a matter of routine. What do you say to that?
Counsel, there was a day I went on patrol to Army headquarters, and the food that I was served at Yundum, I touched the fish and it was
slimy.
No, it was paste, like a paste. I didn't eat it, but by the time I got to Army headquarters, there was no soldier there. And I was worried because the gates were open and I thought that perhaps something was happening. Where are the guards? So I stayed there. I didn't have a radio. There was no means to communicate. I stood on Marina Parade looking left and right and wondering what is going on. But after a few minutes, I saw a soldier come in from the junction just by Atlantic Hotel, and he was dragging his AK-47 and coming down the road. So I waited until he came close, and I said, "What is going on?" He said, "Sir, we are all sick." I said, "But what are you doing on the beach?" He said, "We all have diarrhea, and there's no toilets at the Army headquarters." So I really didn't know that until that point, that there were no toilet facilities or facilities to for soldiers to take care of their personal hygiene at the army headquarters, who had to stay there for a week on guard, and that all the time they would go one by one to the beach and then defecate at the beach. I only found out because they were all sick and they all had to go to the toilet at the same time, and so the army headquarters was left wide open. But they were very sick, and I spent my last money because the army was low on drugs at the time. The clinics definitely had not been stocked as far as I know. So I spent my last money for them to get medication.
But apart from this particular instance, do you recall any other instance?
Yes, of course. I recall many incidents where I myself would not eat the food. And if I don't eat the food, if the food is not fit for my consumption, it's not fit for my soldiers' consumption. And so I would put it in the report. Order somebody to bring a bucket of water and put. But like I said, the military is a tough place, and I'm not complaining about that. I ate it because I was hungry.
What other problems did you, or what were the other difficulties that obtained in the army at the time?
Yes, like I said, apart from that, there was facilities, lack of equipment. The infrastructure that was there was not maintained or taken care of. When soldiers had to sleep in the barracks at the time, the sponges were falling apart. There were bed bugs in the guard room, and really, conditions, like I said, were less than favorable. And so it was not difficult to convince soldiers that they deserve and need better.
How about the socio-political conditions at the time prevailing in the country?
Well, I was not too much into politics, but I knew that as a country we could do better. That Gambia deserved development, we deserved schools, we deserved hospitals, we deserved better communications, we deserved better infrastructure. And I know a lot of people are going to say that, well, we have heard this song before, but let us transform our, let us walk down memory lane a little bit. And you know, most of those who are above 40, 50 can recall what Gambia was like at the time. The only means of communication through Radio Gambia stopped at Brikama. Couldn't get the signal before that. There was no television station. But even if that was a luxury, there were two hospitals, Bansang Hospital, Royal Victoria Hospital. The Ahmadiyya Hospital is private. Everything else was private, and people mostly could not afford that. You go to the hospital, there is no drugs, even though that story has definitely continued down the line. There were not enough schools.
So,
Sir?
so these were the socio-political
Well, can I
conditions.
explain, sir, please? I know we are pressed for time, but
Yes,
I'm on the hot seat, and I would...
It's not hot yet, Mr. Singhate. So,
Well...
so this, you know, you've just said that these are things that are known. So I just want us to put things into context. If it becomes absolutely necessary, yes, by all means, I'll give you the opportunity to. But we just need to summarize on those points. Otherwise, we would spend the whole day here. I mean, we all do know that there were lots of problems. I just want you to identify those problems that perhaps led to the coup eventually. But at least in a very summarized way.
Okay, sir. Well, you said it's not hot yet. Please, you have got very good staff. If you can ask them to put some ice in the freezer, so that when it becomes hot, they can assist. I don't want to catch fire.
You wouldn't be needing it.
Okay, sir. I'm grateful. Yes, but I mean, like I said, with regards to the deficit of infrastructure vis-a-vis the population at the time growing at 4.5% per annum, we knew that definitely Gambians deserved better. We needed more schools. We needed more hospitals. We needed more roads. We needed everything that every other country had that we felt that Gambians deserved. And we wanted to give that to them.
Yes, but
yes,
Mr. Singhate,
yes,
at that time, you were aware of your role and responsibility in society as a soldier, were you not?
Absolutely, sir.
And with all these problems, what did you decide to do?
Okay. With all of these problems, we decided to step in and rectify the problems. That's what we had decided to do, even if losing our lives in the process.
your mindset? Was that the mindset of Sana Sabali? Was that the mindset of Yaya Jammeh? And of course, Sadiq Haidar?
Subsequently, yes, there was a meeting of the minds with regards to a higher course, a greater responsibility of what we could do.
A greater responsibility by whose standard? Because the people have established a constitutional order, and the people who are the higher authority have decided that this is the only means by which we change a government. And you, a group of young officers, you sat there and think it's a higher calling for you to overthrow that arrangement by the people.
Counsel, I'm not arguing with the legality or illegality
Or the morality of it.
I am not arguing with that. Well, morality, then you're going into a very gray area. Because if we want to talk morality and the law, you know as a lawyer that there's a gray area. And I can very well sit here and argue that yes, of course, if
wants this to be seen as a platform wherein ideas are being drummed into people's heads, especially in view of the current political climate. So let's just put that issue aside, all right? And
there was a lot of discontent, and myself and Sana Sabali started joined the conversation of officers complaining, and there is where we sounded their opinion, and all of their opinion at the time was, yes, the system is not a good system, it should go.
Was that a mutiny, or was it complaints in private by a group of soldiers with one common mind?
Well, sir, if you, as a soldier, complain to an extent that you agree that a system has to go, I believe if it is not mutiny, they are the seeds of mutiny.
Perhaps let's limit it to the seeds of mutiny for
Okay, that is fine. Yes,
we've received evidence that the exercise in Kudang was a good success.
Well, success, in my professional view as an officer, was not a success. The logistics were not in place. Command and control was a mess. I can say this because I was the commander for the opposing force, the enemy forces, and I could see how much in disarray the exercise was, because the attacks were not properly coordinated. Nothing was properly coordinated. So for me, the lessons that we learned from Kudang, that at that time, the Gambia National Army was not battle ready. And we needed more exercises from section level to platoon level, company level, which had not happened for a long time.
What do you say to the suggestion that the Nigerian officers were on top of their game, they knew what they were doing, everything went well?
I will tell you one thing. The Nigerian officers that came to the Gambia were definitely knowledgeable. They were very good officers. They knew what they were doing. Whether they practiced that all the time, I don't think so. However, they were definitely good officers because they have, you see, the Nigerian army is a professional army. And in order to rise through the ranks, you really have to be worth your salt. So I cannot fault the standards of the officers who came.
What was the problem then?
Well, like I said, the Nigerian pecking order is very harsh. Very, very harsh. And I'll give you an example. The current Minister of Defense, Major Fai, is a very good officer, a good friend of mine. He was embarrassed in our presence on more than one occasion. And for us, senior officers should be treated in a particular way. But there was once he was embarrassed severely by Colonel Okoji and another by Colonel Owonibi. And this, you know, I mean, like I said, the Nigerian pecking order is very harsh, and it was difficult for Gambian officers to grasp that.
So from what you have said, there was no inefficiency or incompetence on the part of the Nigerian army officers who were deployed to train or manage the Gambia National Army at the time.
I would not call it incompetence. Obviously, you can be competent, but then not execute the functions of your duties.
What does that mean? I mean, it's either a deliberate effort not to deliver, or one is simply incompetent. So which was it?
Perhaps maybe they were just not interested in delivering. I don't know what the terms of the agreement bringing them here was, but I can remember being told that they were supposed to be here to a certain level, bring the army up to a certain level, and then depart.
But that training you talked about in Kudang was an exercise organized by the Nigerians, wasn't it?
Yes, it
was it properly executed?
Well, in my view, it was not properly executed, no.
And who should take responsibility for that?
Definitely the command at the time.
Nigeria.
Yes.
And as a result of that, you were so disgruntled, you thought that the Nigerians should not be leading the army, correct?
Well, like that was the general feeling.
So therefore,
even though it was not my personal, but generally, yes, in the army, yes, there was that discontent.
So the issue of the Nigerians, their presence and leadership in the army contributed to really why the group of officers decided that it was crunch time, it's about time we get rid of this government. Is that the case?
It did contribute, but it was not the sole contributing factor.
That's why we say it did contribute.
Yes, but not in a very major, significant way that all that one could say, no, it's because of the Nigerians. No, it was not.
That the issue of the Nigerians was not the only reason. We've discussed the other reasons. So at Kudang, you said there was a mutiny. Can you tell us who participated in those discussions, sowing the seeds of a mutiny?
Most of the junior officers at the time, I cannot name all, but the few that I can name, which myself and Sana Sabali subsequently brought on board and talked to be part of the process, were Alpha Kinte, Lieutenant Alpha Kinte, and Lieutenant Kante.
First name, Lieutenant Kante.
Is Alaji Kante.
Good. So kindly tell us about the planning for this school.
So, upon our return from Kudang, myself and Sana Savali took things further. We approached Alaji Kante and Alpha Kinte separately and talked to them about this idea and
What idea?
taking over the government. So we spoke to them about this whole plot, and they bought in.
At this stage, you had a brother who was also in the army, correct?
Yes, sir, I did.
And he was also an officer like yourself.
Absolutely.
Did you bring him into the plan?
No way, I did not.
And why is that?
You see, he, I believe, would never have bought into it, and we might have argued, and that would have been it. I never informed him at any one time of the plans to take over the government. He was never part of it.
Okay, so you discussed with Sana Sabali, Alpha Kinte, and Alaji Kante.
Yes, sir.
And then proceed from there.
So when we met, we were second lieutenants, all of us. We said, look, we decided that, look, we need somebody a little bit more senior, somebody with a little bit more experience, somebody who will be able to lead, somebody who we have confidence in, somebody who we can rely on. And we collectively chose Lieutenant Basiru Barrow. And we approached him and he agreed. And so the original 5 members of the plot to overthrow the Jawara government were Lieutenant Basiru Barrow, Lieutenant Alpha Kinte, Lieutenant Alaji Kante, Lieutenant Sana Sabali, and myself.
Do you recall how many months before July 22nd was this plan hatched?
I cannot recall exactly, but from the time we left Kudang, I am not sure whether it was April or March. It must have been after independence. Well, I could be wrong, but please go back to the records. I don't want to inadvertently mislead the Commission.
But this group of 5,
Yes, sir.
the membership later changed. Can
Yes.
you tell us about that?
Well, we once met outside the camp in amongst some lime trees. There were some lime trees somewhere adjacent to Yundum camp, and we went there and
Does it have a name?
no,
Okay.
I think there was an agricultural installation next door, and we crossed the fence and then we went, because we could not talk in the barracks, we had to find a way. But we were spotted by military intelligence, and they reported the matter. So obviously, it's treason, it's treasonous. The stakes are very high, and so one after the other, they decided to withdraw.
Who withdrew?
If I can remember, it must have been, well, I cannot remember between Alaji Kante and Alaji Kinte, sorry, Alpha Kinte, who withdrew first, but I know they were perhaps the first 2 in succession to leave. And there was 3 of us, Lieutenant Barrow, myself, and Sana Sabali. So we had no choice but to bring others on board. 3 of us, 3 officers cannot launch a coup like this. I suggested Yaya Jammeh, and the response that I got from Barrow was not a good one. Sana Sabali was a little bit tame.
Tell us about the response you got from Barrow. What did he say?
he told me, Ndoke nyimma fanlong.
What does that mean in English?
He does. He's well. What is the direct? Okay, direct translation is that he doesn't know himself, but we know what it means in English, that he's arrogant. Even though I tried to talk to him, he wouldn't buy it. But I had gone ahead and spoke to Jammeh anyway, despite Basiru Barrow telling me not to. So I had spoke to Jammeh, and he came on board. But the funny thing is, after telling me that Jammeh is arrogant, he told me that he's the type that will tell you that he can hold one LMG here, one LMG there, and then that's
do the Rambo thing.
Exactly, which as professional soldiers is rubbish. But funnily, he actually said that he can hold an LMG here and then take State House. He did tell me that.
So from that point on, you guys knew that he was prone to exaggeration. He was prone to saying things that would not cut the grain.
Yes, but you take some things with a pinch of salt, or as a joke,
or a bag of salt.
Well, a bag of salt is a little bit too harsh. You know, between friends and comrades, you know, you do have people that exaggerate all the time, but you don't take those comments too seriously. But the important thing was he came on board.
Why did you think Jammeh was a good guy, in spite of the protestations of your senior, Basiru Barrow?
Well, we needed additional officers. He had served in the Presidential Guard, and perhaps his inside knowledge would help in the planning, in drawing the plans.
Or was he just a ready-made candidate in view of the fact that he was always against the government?
Not at all. I can explain to you how I came to be acquainted with Jammeh, but it had nothing to do with politics. I had never discussed politics. In fact, at the time that I approached him because we had already built up a relationship, and not because of his views.
All right, proceed. So now you've recruited Jammeh, so it's now four of
Yes,
you.
sir. Yes, sir.
Basiru Barrow, Edward Singhateh, Sana Sabali, and Yaya Jammeh.
Yes, sir. Then, after Jammeh had come on board, Basiru Barrow decided to withdraw.
Why?
Well, like I said, it had leaked, and the tension was building. We were being watched by military intelligence, we knew that. All along, let me also shed light on this second part of it. There was a parallel process also being run. It is not only the recruitment of the officers.
What do you mean by a parallel process being run?
Yes, sir, that is what I'm trying to explain. 4 or 5 officers alone cannot take over a government without the buy-in of the soldiers. And so I used my position as platoon commander in Alpha Company, and I was the only platoon commander at the time, so I was basically taking care of all of the 3 platoons. Under Major Mamadou Baji, I was the subaltern, I was a junior officer, so I would act as platoon commander, even though according to the military hierarchy, if at all the platoon commander is not there, then the platoon sergeant will stand in for the platoon commander. And I was platoon commander for 1st platoon. There was the senior sergeant acting for 2nd platoon, and so on and so forth for the 3rd platoon. But still, as the officer, I was the one who was giving guidance. And I had developed a relationship with my troops. This relationship was built with confidence. I would make sure that I look after the welfare of my soldiers. I would counsel them. I would be concerned about their welfare. And for example, you have a good soldier who, for some reason, doesn't turn up for duty. Now, rather than charge him with an offense for being absent from place of duty, I will counsel him and find out what is happening at home.
Essentially, you develop a relationship with your troops, and they trusted you.
Yes, absolutely.
And proceed from there.
So what I did was I slowly got buy-in of a few, and then extended it and extended it and extended it until generally I got the buy-in of Alpha Company. And I was the only officer amongst us that was in command of soldiers at the time. Sana Sabali was in charge of support weapons. He had no weapons. He had no troops. He had no office. He was a refugee in the camp. He was just roaming around until he was given a small place somewhere. So I used that connection with my connection with the troops to get them on board. And that is why I said there was a parallel process. So whilst the officers were preparing themselves, I was preparing the troops at the same time. Even though when Sana Sabali was duty officer, he would talk to the soldiers on duty at the time, but you just cannot stand in front of a parade and tell them, look, we are going to overthrow a government who is in. No, you cannot do that. I mean, there's a way that you have to slowly inculcate your thinking into the troops' thinking and then get their buy-in.
So apart from getting Alpha Company soldiers to support your cause, did you get any other officers?
Officers or soldiers?
Did you get additional officers?
Additional officers, after Basiru withdrew, there was 3 of us again. Myself, Sana Sabali, and now Lieutenant Jammeh. And we agreed that, look, really, we cannot launch a coup with just the 3 of us. We need officers to be in command of the troops, to lead them into battle if need be. So we decided at that time to recruit Sadi Buhaidra. But excuse me, let me come back. I've forgotten one point when you talk about officers. Yankuba Toure was posted to Farafenni, but intermittently he would come down to Banjo to collect the pay for soldiers who were receiving their salaries over the pay table. And this was even before Yaya Jammeh came in. When he passed by Yundum once, and I called him aside and I spoke to him. And I told him that this is what is happening. And I know for a fact that if whatever we launch from Banjo, well, before I went into that, I got his buy-in once he agreed to be part of it. I told him that, look, his role would be not only to bring soldiers on board from Farafenni, but if he could not do that, was because I know for a fact that if we launch from Banjo, there would be a counter-attack from Farafenni, that he should make sure that he stalls or stops that attack. And that is how Yankuba Toure came on board.
So he was an original member of it?
The original 5, like I said, but he was brought on board subsequently, but that was his only role. And because he was not at Yundum or in the combos at the time, he did not play an active role in the takeover of the July 22nd itself. In fact, he came down to Banjo a couple of days later because we had stopped the ferries from crossing. They could not cross
But he is one of those who originally agreed
Yes,
to
he was.
participating in the coup.
Yes, he
So
was.
now you have 4 of you.
Yes.
Proceed.
So we decided that, well, we need somebody else on board, at least one person. And we looked at the possibility of bringing Sadu Buhaidra on board. But we agreed that we would not give him the full details of the plan. What we would do was tell him that this is going to happen if we are arrested or something happens, because it had leaked and, excuse me, it had leaked, and there's a possibility that before the day itself we would have been detained. Then he should lead the troops to come and free us, and we continue the takeover from there. So that was Sadi Buhaidra's role. Now, with regards to other officers, I cannot recall whether it was myself and Sana or myself and Yaya Jammeh. We decided to sound the opinion of Major Conte, Major Abdoulaye Conte. Major Abdoulaye Conte is a good senior officer, professional. He knows his stuff, tactically minded. He's a good professional, all-round officer. So we just approached him and spoke to him around the football field in Yundum when we were overlooking a parade. And we didn't tell him exactly what was happening, but we asked him of his opinion about what was prevailing in the country, whether anything better could be done, and what was the possibility of the military stepping in. He agreed that, first of all, that truly the government was not doing well, that they could do much better, that the Gambian people had been left behind, and something should be done. But with regards to a military takeover, he said that that would not work. I think he said in Wolof, "Loldu Musa dox fi." So once he said that, we backed off, because we knew that it's a no-go area. We cannot proceed and then tell him exactly what we were doing.
How about Durcham?
Oh, okay. Excuse me. Yes, Ndurcham was briefly brought on board, and perhaps that's why, because there's so many activities took place. So if I skip something, it's not because I'm trying to leave it out. It's because I'm trying to cram as many details in as short as possible time. Yes, Ndurcham was brought on board by Jammeh, I believe. Jammeh was the one who recommended Ndurcham. And briefly he came on board, he attended 1 or 2 meetings, and he was always panicking. I'll give you an example. When we had a meeting in Jammeh's house, I think, first of all, he came very improperly dressed. And then his T-shirt was inside out. When he was going out, he had his slippers on the wrong feet. He was just not himself. Well, with all due respect, to him. But put it this way, planning a coup is not an easy thing. Not everybody can withstand the pressure and the scrutiny because of the implications. So.
So among all those planners, it was yourself, Yaya Jammeh,
yes, sir,
and Sana Sabali, at least, who were able to really deal with the pressure, who did not buckle under all that pressure.
Well, I would not say that, I would not want you to try to separate the wheat from the chaff in that manner. It was our idea from inception, myself.
You know that, Mr. Singhate, but you just told us that this is pressure that is difficult to withstand. Not everybody could withstand it. Your senior officers, like Ndurcham, for instance, behaved irrationally during the planning period. What I want to establish is that the three of you at least were able to withstand that pressure and ultimately carry out the coup.
Okay, if you put it that way, yes. But I don't want it to be painted as if we were the ones that stood out from the rest. Remember, myself and Sana Sab, it was our conception, it was our plan. We believed in it. Everyone else was brought on board.
But the fact remains that the three of you were able to withstand the pressure in spite of all the rumors about coup. You were able to withstand that pressure, and ultimately you carried on and carried out a coup.
Yes, sir.
Good. So, what was the initial plan? What were you going to do? What was the first plan?
The initial plan was to take State House. This is what I proposed. I was overruled, and they told me that no, we will take we will arrest the head of state when he arrives at the airport. And I explained to them that, look, there will be civilians there. He's coming on a commercial flight. There will be civilians on the plane. Dignitaries coming to meet him. We cannot risk launching something like this that may involve exchange of fire in such a public place. But they told me, no, this is what we will do. So
who made that decision?
Well, it was generally an agreement. Well, I would not say an agreement. This is what they felt. This is what Jammeh felt. This is what Sana felt. Who else was there at the meeting? Was it Ndur Cham or Alaji Kante? I cannot remember who else was at that meeting, but I know I was overruled, and so what I did, I drew the plans for both the airport and State House at the same time.
Were these written plans or just plans you had in your head and you discussed amongst yourselves?
No, they were all written down and well documented. Written.
Do you have copies? Do you still have copies? It will be interesting.
The night of the 21st, when the coup failed and we knew we were in deep trouble, I ran home and I burnt everything.
You hid the evidence?
I burnt it.
You burnt the evidence?
Yes, I did. I
Thank
burnt
you.
everything.
Right.
However, obviously I drew the plans. I knew exactly what to do. I had briefed the soldiers prior to going to the airport. All of those soldiers within the Guard of Honor that we needed to, in fact, the plan was that when the president goes between the Guard of Honor, but should I be saying this in public?
Well, I think...
should I be saying some of these things in public? I think
but yes, but the only exception is national security information. But I'm not sure whether this qualifies. But
well, you know, you made a decision about 40 minutes ago not to go into the discussion of a certain thing because of the prevailing circumstances in the country. I also do not want to give ideas to somebody who might say, well, this man said it, and then so...
Fair enough, fair enough. If you think it gives ideas to others as to how to stage a coup, perhaps maybe we could skip that. But your idea was that at the airport, the president would be arrested.
Yes.
And why didn't that happen?
Okay. Like I said, sorry, yes, you're confirmed.
No,
okay.
Please proceed.
Like I said, I will skip the details of it, and I will be available for whatever details you want.
No, please, elsewhere. By all means. Go ahead.
But generally, it was for the airport. But I can explain exactly what plans, how I drew up the plans for State House. But that one failed. Now, the plan...
Why did it fail?
Yes, I'm coming to that. Not only had it leaked, and that we were searched before we went on parade, Jammeh was disarmed, Sana Sabali was supposed to bring ammunition to the airport because we didn't have any ammunition. And upon his arrival and distribution of the ammunition, which should have coincided with the plane parking at the, on the apron, then we would have launched. But because we did not have the tools to implement, we could not. That is why it failed.
But we received evidence that after the airport, soldiers went back to barracks. There was talk about it among the soldiers. Even the Nigerians were aware that a coup was in the making.
Yes, that, like I said, it had leaked. In fact, I was a member of the Color Party. The Color Party, those that hold...
What is Color Party?
Yes,
for those of us?
yes. Those that hold the national colors, the flags, the national colors, and the battalion colors. You understand?
Yes, I do.
Yes. So when we went to receive the colors from the battalion commander's office, there was Colonel Okoji from Army Headquarters seated in the battalion commander's office, along with Captain Biran Sen, who was in charge of military intelligence. So they are never there when we go to retrieve the colors from the battalion commander's office. Prior to that, I think...
you're suggesting, therefore, that they must have known something was happening?
Of course they knew. I mean, we knew that they knew. In fact, prior to that, a couple of soldiers were arrested and taken to the then NSS, defunct NIA. And I cannot remember exactly who and who they were, but they were interrogated on what was happening in Yundum. So obviously it had leaked, it was rife. Soldiers were talking about it in the camp. Yes.
Just one last point before we go on our first break.
Yes,
We've
sir.
received testimony from a soldier who said he was there and he had Yaya Jammeh walk into Colonel Akoji's office. No, not Colonel Akoji, the commanding officer at Yundum Barracks at the time.
Colonel Audu.
Yes, and he told him that everything has failed. And the guy told him, but the president is going home at State House.
It's not true.
No.
And I will tell you why. Yaya Jammeh was at the airport. Obviously, the president leaves before anybody leaves. When he came and inspected the guard of honor, he left. And so Jammeh could not at that time have been in Yundum Barracks to tell Colonel Audu that it had failed.
No, maybe I mischaracterized it a bit, or maybe
Yes.
I was misunderstood. So after all the soldiers have left Yundum Barracks, sorry, the airport, and returned to Yundum Barracks, Yaya Jammeh walked into this colonel's office and told him, well, everything has failed. And the Nigerian officer responded that, but it hasn't failed. This man, the president, is going home to State House.
Not true. That is not true at all. First of all, you don't just walk into the battalion commander's office. Secondly, Yaya Jammeh and this particular Colonel Audu, were like cat and mouse. They did not see eye to eye.
Would you say
Yes.
that the Nigerian officers were aware that a coup was in the making and they just gave it a blind eye?
No, I would not say that. You see, in order for you to take drastic measures, you need strong enough evidence. I don't believe that they were talking enough to Gambian soldiers or Gambian officers. There was that divide, and also which brought a little bit of discontent. So we worked freely under their nose, perhaps to their knowledge, but there was nothing that they could have done. They could have done something about it, but nothing was done because it was perhaps it was just seen as a rumor?
Well, Nigeria is known to have had the most coups in West Africa, and the Nigerian officers obviously are used to coup d'etats. We received evidence suggesting that these Nigerian officers, in fact, encouraged the Gambian officers to stage a coup d'etat.
That is not true. I was one of those from that started this. There was no encouragement from any Nigerian officer or soldier at Yundum at the time, or in Farafenye or anywhere.
But did they give a blind eye to what was obvious in the camp at the time?
No, I don't believe that they gave a blind eye.
Thank you very much. This is a good point to stop, and we come back after the time the chair would direct.
Thank you, the council. Thank you, witness. We come back at 5 minutes after 12. Is that okay?
That's fine.